Welcome to Laid Back Law with your favorite lawyers from around the interwebs, discussing the most pressing of topics every Friday at noon Eastern Time.
All right, we are back, and joining us today, we have Nik Starow, who is representing ABBA on Sweden Day. He looks like he stepped out of an ABBA video to me. We have Sean Martin, I think, potential criminal, and Ron Coleman. Later on, we should have the illustrious Nate. Now, before we got started, I was asking Nik Starow if his long hair was common in Sweden. He said, not really, but I'm of the generation I liked heavy metal. And so I had to ask what his thoughts are on the most notorious black metal band in history, Mayhem, which is part Nordic and part Swedish, because I think their lead singer was Swedish, the band was Nordic.
The band was Norwegian, and the original setup was all Norwegian, but then they got the lead singer, who the person then via he did he did a Kurt Cobain before Kurt Cobain, and and allegedly the next album from Mayhem was the picture of him as he lay there with
But folks, it gets better, because not to stop there, but the lead guitarist, and I think it was the drummer, synth guy, well, they had their problems, and the drummer synth guy decided he needed to murder the other one, and literally chasing him downstairs and brutally murdered him. There's even a movie about this. I think it is called Mayhem. I don't know. But he's already served his time, and he's out.
Yeah, he's out and about, and he has started a new band. Well, that was 10 years ago. He started a new.
Yeah, he's been out a while. I mean, I don't even think he served 20 years.
Yeah, well, he got the maximum as the current Norwegian law. As of I believe at the time it was 24 years, and he served 17.
Wow! So there you go, folks. It doesn't matter what the crime is; it depends on where you are.
And anecdote,
what are you clapping for, Ron?
Welcome to
I'm
anecdote.
trying to keep myself from falling asleep.
Back in late 80s, me.
I'm sorry. Hold on. We're just not entertaining enough for you.
I'm sorry.
Jump in. You want to say?
Okay. Mayhem also burnt down churches. If that is.
Hey, Sean, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Ron. How are you?
Why don't we talk about some legal stuff?
Sure. We talk about.
You guys continue. Talk about your Norwegian black metal. Go ahead. Eric
Happy
is
Swedish National Day, by the way.
No, I'm not. You're being a dick. Let's just put it that way, okay? If you want to say something, that's cool, but you don't have to be a dick about it. Thank you.
Dude, too. How could you not realize that sometimes even I have to be like that? I'm sorry, Eric. I don't mean to get under your skin.
So
really,
okay,
I'm not trying to be that guy.
But happy Swedish National Day, and where we drink, we eat pickled herring and sacrifice to Odin. And,
how has it been today over there? Very good Sweden Day.
It's Swedish weather. It's gloomy. It's like right out of an Ingmar Bergman film, but that doesn't stop us from drinking, eating pickled herring, and burn things for Odin. And
cool. All right. So while we're talking about burning down relationships, I don't know if it's legal, but people probably have some thoughts about the blow up between Donald Trump and Elon Musk that went down yesterday.
Oh, the fancy
including
theater it is. Fancy theater.
Well, it's pretty ugly, and I do have a question for the lawyers who could maybe answer this. Viva Fry, friend of the show, released a video talking about how Elon Musk may be at risk for defamation by implication. Because of the claims he made about Donald Trump being in the Epstein files. Now, everybody knows that Donald Trump's in the flight logs with Jeffrey Epstein, but the statement made definitely implied more. So what are people's thoughts on that? Is there a defamation by implication, or is that just like,
Nah,
tough talk?
I don't think so. I don't think we are just by this statement alone, since it's already been out with the flight logs, the implication that it is in the Epstein files, well, the flight logs is part of the Epstein files. So I don't think you get there. Now, if this goes any further, if he releases more information or more opines about it, yeah, but I don't think that in itself gets them there.
I think that's a very good point, Nick. I mean, there's also the other issue of it doesn't get more public than the president of the United States, and he has the biggest bully pulpit in the world. So no matter what Elon may say, I don't know. I think it's going to be very tough to claim you've defamed the president and you hurt his feeler bugs or caused him some real damages at this point. So I think there's multiple reasons why it would fail. But I will say this is like the best pro wrestling heel turns ever.
Is it kayfabe?
I don't know, but it feels like
Elon is trying to save his companies.
Feels like Scott Hall wrote the script.
Yeah. Elon is trying to save his companies, and he has to distance himself from Trump, because over here in Europe, his sales are basically zero for a couple of months straight, and of Teslas. So he needs to win over the liberals again.
I don't see the left taking him back. I mean, maybe because he's the richest guy, but I don't see the left taking him back. He's an apostate to them. So
I agree that there's no going back. Once you burn the bridge, it's gone. So.
I think what Elon Musk is in his own category, but not in the sense of a category that means that what Nick and Sean are saying are wrong, but that he's simply in his own category. He is pretty much still the richest man in the world, and probably will be for a very long time. His place in history and in American society is absolutely unique. And I think he's going to come and go. I don't want to sound anything like a trust the plan guy on this, but it is so over the top. Yesterday it was so over the top that it is hard to take at face value. The accusation that Trump is a pedophile, just straight out. I mean, that's insane. That's so freaking insane. So I would, besides the fact that I can't actually answer Eric's direct question because I represent Donald Trump in another
I didn't know
matter. But my take on this whole drama is it's utterly unreal. We can all agree on that, right? It's like nothing any of us has ever seen, except at the much lower rent parts of the internet.
And on that note, I'm seeing it in the chat too. There was a profile piece done on Elon Musk recently with the New York Times that made some very strong implications of drug use and things like this. There are some people who feel like the behavior was so radical, so erratic that it made them wonder if there might be any truth to the allegations from the New York Times. I'm curious your thoughts.
What we've seen on smoking weed on Joe Rogan and stuff like that, but when it comes to his outrage, when you look at the reports about how he treats workers or people around him, how the enormous high standard he demands, be available 24/7, 365, or you're out. He has blown up at people around him before. So is this something new? No,
yeah, he's mercurial. So is Trump.
This time it's out in the open, and it's against the president. But I don't think it's beyond what he has done before. Just this time it's out in the open.
I guess I do want to address the claims though from Musk, because I mean again that they're beyond the pale. This is David Schoen, I believe his name is, who was a lawyer that actually worked against Epstein back in 2009. He's being asked about Trump's involvement, and I think it's important.
And this goes to the more salacious rumors, but I would like you to just, whatever you can say on it. Obviously, our current president has had relationships with Epstein in the past, and there are those Katie Johnson and maybe other victims who have accused Trump of being involved in things like this. In my experience, Trump supporters will not listen to anything along those lines. Obviously, we're not a court of law here right now, but
Sorry about
are
the
those
wind.
claims of that case was dropped? It was dropped before it went to court. In your opinion, as a lawyer and your experience, is there anything you can say as to the validity of those claims, or whether or not there will be any more about that?
Nothing at all. The only thing that I can say about President Trump is that he is the only person who, in 2009, when I served a lot of subpoenas on a lot of people, or at least gave notice to some pretty connected people that I wanted to talk to them, he is the only person who picked up the phone and said, let's just talk. I'll give you as much time as you want. I'll tell you what you need to know, and was very helpful in the information that he gave, and gave no indication whatsoever that he was involved in anything untoward whatsoever, but had good information that checked out and that helped us, and that we didn't have to take a deposition of him.
That was in 2009?
That was in 2009. So,
Do you know if there's any truth to James Patterson's claims that Trump kicked Epstein out of Mar-a-Lago?
I've definitely heard that.
Yeah.
I definitely heard that, and I don't know that it was Trump himself, as opposed to a
That's not what I would
manager
call
there.
confirmation.
Trump's club, so.
yeah.
That's true. He's heard that. I mean, I don't know,
Yeah.
but
Okay.
either way, I do think that is relevant to
No,
Trump
it
and
is
his character.
and I think that everyone's heard it, but just a reporter or whatever that guy is
Mhm.
should have made it clear that. Do you know if it's true? Yeah, I heard that. That's not a response.
Yeah.
Well, I'm
I haven't
sure-
heard it denied, though. I haven't heard anyone deny that it's true, other than people who believe that if Trump said it was raining, that it would be sunny. Except for that world.
Well, okay, fair enough. Anyway, my thought is that if there was anything to it whatsoever, it would have been leaked out at least within the last 4 years. I mean,
Yes,
they're
I
going
think
after
so.
Trump for every other possible thing out there. You mean to tell me that at a minimum, because I mean,
Yeah.
we're talking about Southern District of New York here, Comey's daughter, you think that it wouldn't just happen to at a minimum
Yeah.
leak? Come on.
And that would have killed his run. That would have, all the stuff after January. It's like they could have leaked it at some point. That would have destroyed everything. So the idea that they'd be sitting on this for like a secret.
Let's not. I want to make it clear. Eric was not implying that Comey's daughter would have been the person to leak such information.
No.
It might sound like that from someone looking at the transcript. That's not what Eric meant to say. He's just saying that's the scene. The Southern District of New York is a scene, and it is not a Trump-friendly scene.
Well, it's
Correct.
not only the DOJ, but the FBI. God knows, it wasn't like the FBI was friends of Donald Trump circa 2021, 22, or 23.
Or even
Or even now.
2017 to 2021. I mean,
Yeah,
I
exactly.
I think that there's some controversy about James Comey and things that he's finding on the beach.
Yes.
I mean, by the way, what do you guys think of that? It's an interesting thing because he's not the first person to have come up with this. Gretchen Whitmer famously had a 8645 behind her during a video, if I recall. Does anybody remember that?
Yes.
And
Yes.
so do you think
I think Comey over. He pressed his luck on what he could get away with. I don't think it was a death threat. I think it was childish. It was a childish move, like shooting rubber bands at a webcam, but no worse than that.
Yeah. Well, I think he was trying to be an edgy boy. I mean, because yes, 86 is a restaurant term.
Edgy boy?
Yeah, he was trying to be edgy.
Okay.
Yeah. And yes, 86 is a restaurant term, but also in the criminal world, 86 also means to take care of somebody's business. So yes, he was trying to do a thing. And I think if he had just stood on his business at that point, instead he goes, oh, well, I found it like this. I didn't know what it means. I just thought they were neat and I took a picture. It's like, just say you did it. And I'd have some respect for you. I mean, nothing he said was illegal. And I don't think any action should have been taken against him. But just if you're saying it, say it. Don't be afraid, like
he's been playing. He's been cute for a long time.
yeah.
Yeah, I agree with this 1,000% because I will say this though. I do like the video when some of the conservatives were complaining about it. They did the video of all of those same people saying like 86-46. So that was actually funny to see how, the pearl cussing only really goes one way sometimes.
Yes.
But, it is what it is. They all play these dumb little games.
The one thing that's going to be confusing, well, God willing, we get to having an 86 president of the United States. It's going to look weird when you're saying 86. I'm just that is going to be a little weird.
Well,
I do keep thinking of Maxwell Smart.
Well, speaking of presidents and longevity, you've heard of the president John Tyler, right?
Yes.
We never stopped talking about him in my house.
Yeah, it's a really popular one. But anyway, he was the 10th president of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
His grandson just died a week ago Sunday.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Think about that for a second. The longevity of the span. I think he was 94 or something. But I'm like, holy cow! You're good. His grandson goes back only in 2 generations to an early president. I mean, I think it might even been Revolutionary War.
But to be fair, though, they both had their children in their 70s. So he had his kid in the 70s, and then that kid had a kid in the 70s. So that gives him a little bit more time.
I know, but it's still just so remarkable.
Cool.
I just love it when you Americans talking about your ancient history.
70 years ago.
Well, there is that.
Damn Viking. We're here with a
My
Viking.
barn, the oldest part of it is built 1820. Who was president in 1820?
1820, Madison? Wait.
No.
John Quincy Adams?
No, Quincy Adams was 1824 because they had the deal. So
my barn is older than that president. Okay, than that presidency.
It'd have been Monroe.
My ancestors are still in Europe along with yours. Okay.
Yeah. If we're going to brag about ancient history, you kind of have a beat.
Okay. Wow. All right.
We'll leave that one alone.
All right. We'll get something less controversial here. Nate was going off on X earlier today, and
wait. With President Trump met with Germany's new chancellor, Chancellor Merz, who presented him with his grandfather's birth certificate.
Which I think is funny. Is that like a birther joke internally or something?
I read that line, was presenting him with his grandfather's, and my immediate thought, oh, please don't make it be his military service.
No. I think that was actually a move to say, look, we have a common heritage. We have some common ground there. And it's because a lot of the world has treated him poorly, and they may reciprocate the way he treats it, but Merz is like, hey, if maybe I'm nice to the guy and I give him something, he's not going to act like an ass to me. I mean, it's a shocking thought to try that, and it seems like it worked funny well. Because Trump is always susceptible to flattery, in my opinion.
I think everybody. It's like look at how all this that went down with Elon, for example.
Yes.
There's a very strong possibility that Elon may go to the fight with him tomorrow night. I would not put it past him. I mean, people have said the nastiest things about Trump, blah, 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 blah. And then later on, if he has use for them, or they can always come back with flattery.
But that's a guy thing now, right? Most guys, like, how many times have we had some knockdown, drag out arguments, and the next time we're all cool, right? It's because guys generally, we know sometimes it's all right, but then, we get over it. We get over it. Women, it's just, for some reason, it takes like 10 years. And like, I'm still not talking to her because she stepped on my foot 10 years ago.
This is true. Women do hold the grudges more, but I'd say that Trump is quite unique in that. Like most of people don't get accused of Epstein lists and things.
Yeah.
I mean, Trump he really has an incredibly thin skin and thick skin at the same time.
Yes,
it's hard to imagine. It's like
it's I guess it's that hyper pragmatism though. Like, okay, he still will find a use for you, or still recognizes the use, but still, yeah, it's tough when people say these things and then you turn. But I mean, I think it's true with like all the people that Trump's run against. Ted Cruz, like they're great to go. Marco Rubio is in his cabinet. He's little Marco.
Brian Kemp, who we had a long dispute with. He's come around now.
The only person who has it's Mitt Romney.
Oh, well.
Really, when you think about it.
But Mitt Romney almost perfectly represents that country club Republican vibe that, which is the biggest irony of all, because Trump absolutely hangs out with the
country
rich,
club.
Owns a country, but yet his ethos, I would say, is closer to a blue collar construction worker in New York.
At times it is. I do agree.
So I mean, and he's again a unique character in that he's got a little Rodney Dangerfield from Caddyshack in him.
He's a guy from Queens, like me.
Okay, there we go. Well, I know there's something to that because my show partner Mark, who's from Brooklyn, he's like, everything it can be explained by, oh yeah, he's a Queens guy, or that's a Jersey asshole, or that's this or that. He's like, and I don't know. Even
got Ronnie C and Donnie T from Queens.
I'm really from Brooklyn, but I was born in Queens.
Okay.
I mean, I would when in the 80s, I remember Spy Magazine used to call Donald Trump Queens-born casino operator Donald Trump. And short-fingered vulgarian Donald Trump.
Oh yeah, I remember the short-fingered vulgarian. That, but what was it? That one got to him because he kept taking pictures of his hand and stuff.
Start taking isotoners with stretched out fingers on them.
Yeah, that's the funny part about Trump.
Yeah, you really can get under his. So this is actually, you could get under his skin, but he will, in most cases, forgive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's remarkable. It is truly remarkable. All right, so oh God, I hate to even ask. Karen Reed, anything new, anything interesting? That trial seems like it's going to go on. It's the next OJ. It just goes forever.
So it's today. The crash experts for the defense are on. They're starting their thing today. I haven't watched it, but apparently you're seeing the difference between like actual scientists versus like pretend scientists.
Yeah.
Like the quality of research. I was texting another person who's streaming it right now, and he is astounded at the level of work these guys did for the current. Well, but they did all this work, but the FBI and the DOJ were cutting the check. So I'm sure basically no expense was spared. But it's very interesting. He says the amount of data they have is surprising.
Yeah, because Dr. Welcher, who testified,
I'll be watching it at 6 tonight, chat. By the way, join me.
Yeah, and Dr. Welcher, who testified for the state, claimed there wasn't enough information to do these tests. And here comes Crash Daddy Dr. Wolf and says, "Oh, it's easy. Look," and here's the tests. But it's a lot of objections from the state every time he tries to compare what he did to what Dr. Welcher didn't do, and it gets sustained all the time. And so it actually can't really compare to what he is doing to what Dr. Welcher didn't do, but it's quite obvious anyway.
Are the accusations about the judge being very pro-prosecution or anti-defense, are they true? Because I saw something like she was saying asshole about a lawyer under her breath or something.
That I don't think it was clear was her.
No,
I don't think it was clear as her.
It's I heard that rumor too. I don't think was the judge. It might have been somebody.
There were a lot of people with microphones right there, so it could have been. She's not. I don't think she's necessarily biased because she was a public defender previously in her career. She was a defense attorney for a long time. There was a bench trial she had a couple of months ago where she was actually it was very different how she ruled on a lot of things. I just think in this one, it's the bell curve. You have, the average judge, okay, half of them are going to be really below average. And I think Bev is just a below average judge. And it's showing in her rulings. And she is I think she's got a bit of I don't want to look like an idiot in front of the world. So she's not going to change her position. She's not willing to reverse and correct once she starts going down this course. I think there's a lot of that there. I think I'm more attributing it to her incompetency than I am willing to attribute it to malice.
I have a question really quickly. I see this chat here, and I'm actually happy to see that because it seems to me like in the LawTube community, it is almost 100% in favor of Karen Reed, unless I'm missing some lawyer who's actually leaning the other way.
It mainly is.
Well, Anne here is the second person I've come across who has said, just guilty as hell. So can anybody steel man that position or whatever? Because I do find it odd how so much.
For my part, I'm always pro-defense. There's no question about it. If you watch my channel, you are joining in on a pro-defense channel. Now, sometimes maybe a third of the cases or trials I cover, this prosecution changes my mind. But for me, that is how a juror should be. They should come in. That person is innocent.
Not guilty.
Convince me. Convince me. So that has always been my position. It's not that I'm pro Karen Reed. It's that I'm pro defense. Bring me the evidence, and I will change my mind. I've done it before.
Yeah. And I guess what I'll say is, I mean, there's enough here that I still think the jury could say, no, we still think, like, Karen Reed still stands a very good chance of being convicted. A very good chance. This is a retrial. And as you go through retrial, and the more times you get tried, your rate of conviction generally gets higher and higher and higher. Usually at some point,
the prosecution's going to make fewer mistakes.
Yeah, they generally can make it.
But isn't the defense also going to make fewer mistakes?
They do. But I think at the end of the day, at some point, it's just the odds of, remember, they can miss 100 times. You can't miss once on defense. And it's just eventually you do get convicted. That's just the odds of it. I do think that if Karen were to be convicted right now, it's kind of like there was a case out in Indiana, the Richard Allen case. Yeah. A lot of stuff, I think it was a very unfair trial. I think a lot of stuff was improperly excluded. But given the jury had this collection of evidence to look at, what was presented to them, they convicted the guy. And I have to look at that and say, based on what they had in front of them, it makes sense. Based on this Karen Reed case, they could convict her, and I don't necessarily think I could fault them. The biggest thing is this case is a complete disaster. And this is where I think a lot of anti-Karen Reed people aren't willing to admit, if this was any other type of case where you saw police evidence, not properly logged, you've never adhered to any investigatory techniques and procedures. I mean, this is a suburban Boston police department where the cops make like $100,000 a year. I could go out to Hee Hawville, Ohio, where they have like part-time cops on duty. They would do a better job than this of preserving evidence, controlling evidence, interviewing witnesses, gathering data, doing everything properly, not running around acting like they're corrupt or they have axes to grind. They would just be professional about it. And
I've heard that people who watch CSI would do a better job of collecting evidence.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I guarantee I could
like citizens. I mean,
I could have picked. You could pick a lot of random people off the street, and they would probably have they would have probably done it better, just kind of like winging it. That's one of the biggest problems here. But I can understand a jury saying like, yeah, probably she did it. I could see them compromising on like a manslaughter verdict. I do think it's very possible. I don't think it should happen. I don't think they've proved it at all. I think that at the very least, and this is something I've routinely have said, part of the way you handle corrupt and garbage police action is by getting not guilties. Because when the jury can come out and say, we voted not guilty because we don't trust the cops. We don't trust anything they did or put together. The people in the community then go to city council and say, We want new cops because we're tired of bad people getting not guilties. And then what happens? The police get called and you fix the problem. Otherwise, if you support all of this and Karen gets convicted, you're not saying it's okay the police did this. Where I know, and I ask every single time one of these people, would you be okay if you got a DUI or any other crime and the police acted like this in your case? They never answer it. But you know the answer is no, I wouldn't want this. And you wouldn't trust this in any other situation. But
you sound like Johnny Cochran's "You police the police." That's
Yeah,
what he told Joy for the
you guys, you set, and I say this, you get to set public policy as a juror. Is this acceptable? Do you condone the charges? Do you condone the case? And do you condone the conduct?
You can address the jury. And
I say it very. I very kind of
nullification. No,
I don't. I say you have the ability to speak on. I worded on a couple of judges.
Yeah, the Constitution makes the jury part of the process because you speak for the community.
Yes. You get to decide you get to decide for the community what's going to happen here, and that I generally don't go much further than that, but I try to do it as much as I can to say you guys control all of this.
Well, there's a fascinating case. We've had Norm Pattis on multiple times. He actually had a jury nullification case that went up, and the judge agreed that he could ask for jury nullification in the case, and the Justice Department went after the judge. I wish I had more details. Do you remember what I'm talking about, Nate?
I think I do, yeah, but I can't remember the details now.
Well, but anyway, it's fascinating because
awesome.
Apparently you can't just ask for jury nullification.
You can't, sadly.
But I guess he had a judge rule that he could, so it's like a weird question.
There are states though. Yeah, well, there are states where people are trying to push for what's called the Fully Informed Juror Act, where as a juror, by part of your jury instructions are you are free to do as you wish. If you wish to acquit, you may acquit, regardless. And I think that's something that should exist out there. If you wish to acquit for whatever reason, you have that right, and you should be able to do it.
Right. There's a couple cases out there. I mean, obviously it's not common, and nor should it be. But there's one case of where the marshals were bringing back a really bad PDF file type person who murdered a child, did
Gary Plache.
Okay, that might be it. And at the airport, as they were walking by, somebody turned out of the phone booth and took him out right there in front of everybody, in front of the marshals. And the jury's kind of going, yeah.
Well, it was dad.
Not guilty.
It was dad of the kid.
Of the victim, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think if there's ever a case for jury nullification, that would be pretty high up there.
And the jury, his case was interesting because the jury said, we don't want to convict because we're worried about what's going to happen to him. And the judge said, I can't help you with that. So they ended up convicting him. And then the judge basically gave him probation.
Oh.
The problem, the jury nullification procedures and rules came into effect after the white juries in the South kept not guilty. So that's when they start putting those rules into place to say, well, you can do it, but now you're not allowed to tell the juries they can't do it. They can do it.
Yeah.
I forgot about the civil rights aspect of it, but yeah, I remember. I know Norm addressed that as well. But I do think that maybe, because times have changed or whatever, I think there are legitimate times that jury nullification would be appropriate. Where
I think there's a lot of times where it would be appropriate.
Yeah, I mean,
that's why you don't want a lawyer on a jury too, though, because the lawyer knows.
Well, okay, that's my next question though. This is kind of a nightmare to me. As you put it, in the case, you said, if the evidence in front of the jury that they actually get to see, leads them to the, particular conclusion, it would be, to me as a juror, a nightmare to look at a case and then vote guilty and then find out more information about it and regret my decision because I was not allowed to see other material. And I don't know, does anybody have any thoughts about that? Because it just seems kind of fundamentally evil.
It would be scary. It would be scary.
But that happens all the time. No, when for instance, you can have a search warrant that finds the dead body or the cocaine, and that search is found to be unconstitutional. Then guess what? The jurors are, I didn't know they found a coke in his house, but we found him not guilty. It happens all the time. Remember, it's about the means, not the ends.
Right. But I'm more concerned about finding somebody guilty, and then my feeling like I've,
I think
put away an innocent person.
Yeah, I think Eric's more talking about, like, let's say all the Karen Reed jurors learned about everything that's happened so far. They learned about the entire lore of the Karen Reed situation. And would any of them say, "Oh my God, if I had known any of this, I wouldn't have convicted"? And that's just the nature of. Sometimes you work with the facts you have, and sometimes they're allowed, sometimes they're not. I mean, that's the crappy part about it.
Well, like, for example, Kyle Rittenhouse. Can you imagine if they didn't allow the video?
Yeah.
I mean, he'd be gone. He'd be under the jail. Right now, I think he'd still be in prison. It'd be over.
Yes.
And if I was on a jury and then I found out there was a video, that's just an example. And I would feel awful, and it'd be like, I have no recourse. I would feel like I was deceived into doing something that was against my wishes, my thoughts, but having no recourse whatsoever. And that doesn't feel like justice, in my opinion.
Well, the Richard Allen case is actually a good example of this. Like, so much stuff was hidden, the way the police had acted, the way they'd done things. Yeah, it's a great example of, like, if you could tell the jury, I'm sure that they would probably change their mind. But sadly, this is the best system, it's the best system we got. So on one hand, it's the best system we got. On the other hand, it's also the best system we got.
Yeah.
Anyway, if you say, let's, the UK, I understand that they've gotten rid of the majority of jury trials. Well, look at those freaking judges. They're throwing people in prison for standing outside of buildings and holding up signs.
Mean tweets.
And think of the judge, the out of control judge. I mean, think of the January 6th people who are doing very meaningful amount of time on misdemeanors. So please, there's no. Let's face it, this world is a very imperfect one.
Yes.
Yeah. And imagine the Scandinavian system where the state can appeal a not guilty verdict. So yeah.
Okay.
Oh, in other words, a jury verdict.
No, we don't have juries.
Okay. So a verdict of. But all right. But that does make it a little bit more understandable why an appeal is possible.
Now, so we have on the lower court, we have one judge and 4 layman judges, or professional jurors, so to speak, who then decides in more or less voting.
Sure. So what's a professional juror?
That they are elected for jury duty for 4 years.
Oh, it's almost like a grand jury type, but just longer.
It's kind of like it's kind of like that, because like Broken Baker had done this before. You kind of get selected. Like in some countries, you're selected and like, hey, congratulations, Eric. You're now going to be on jury duty for a while. And you hear case after case after case, but you hear them in the trial setting. And they think that helps because you're not just coming in, oh, God, I missed work today, and now I got to go do this. You go through your jury duty for a day or two, and then you never worry about it ever again in your life. They think there's some help to have a jury that gets a little bit of training and has some experience and is there, and they can kind of get into a groove. And it's a different way of they look at proposing it.
That's an interesting idea. I'm not opposed to that. The idea of having knowledge, I guess, where
so our professional jurors or layman judges, they start off with, you have to volunteer for it and apply for it, as in you have to want to do this. Then you get
that would be the only worry I'd have. I know that sounds bad, but it's like I always worry a little bit about the people who want to be in positions and what their motivation might be. It's sort of like the whole expert witness question, where people don't necessarily like free expert witnesses because they could be an activist, if you will. I don't know.
Yeah. For instance, we have a lot of very far right leaning politics and some areas whose supporters want to get into immigration court,
right,
as layman judges. So yeah, there's a risk to it. because you can all, well, let's just say the outcomes have been very, very predictable.
Good. I'm not alone. Miriam here has the same thought about that. Honestly, that's the reason. What scares me most about being on a jury, the idea that I know that I'm not able to see everything and judge everything. That I'm getting an extremely filtered view on what is put before me. It would drive me a little bit nutty.
But if we go back to the Richard Allen case, because the difference between Judge Canoni in Can Read case, everything is out in the open. We can discuss it. Judge Gull hindered anything from coming out. We still don't have the transcript.
Okay. Well, speaking of jurors and juries, I saw this article, and I know that Nate, you're doing some coverage of Diddy or whatever. What's going on with this? He's mean mugging the jury.
Yeah, the judge admonished him for looking, and like he looks and nods to the jury and all that stuff. So
yeah,
she told him to stop doing that.
Yeah, from what I've been reading about it, Nate, like they'll be making, like on Cross, they're making some really good points. And Diddy's like, look at the jury, like it sounds like he's going like, yeah, like check that out, yeah. And it's funny because the judge said like, quit doing that, shut up. And they took a recess because he pulled the jury out and he said, you got to knock it off. And they took a short break and they came back in. And Diddy comes back in and like to all the reporters, like, sup? And then he sits down, he starts like sweet talking the sketch artist and everything. So it's like he went away and he didn't immediately stop it. And
when he said the sketch artist, he looks like a koala. So he let the sketch artist draw him better.
Yeah.
Things you worry about when you're.
He looks like an alien, like with a freaking huge head in the one sketch picture.
But
it's odd. I'm just wondering why. I mean, if he's not actually threatening them or whatever, he's defending himself, right? I mean, so a nonverbal cue to the jury would seem appropriate to me. If he's there, he's being represented, he's representing himself. He's not saying anything on the record, but like nodding to a point. How is that wrong?
I don't think it should be wrong. I mean, certainly, because otherwise the only option is he should sit there and go like this the whole time. That's not fair to him. He's allowed to be like, yeah, I like that. And, like, are you guys listening to this? Like, pay attention,
But I think it's a little bit more than that.
If something had happened and he had gone like this and put his head down, or
you can make a limited amount of non-goofy expressions, but not while looking at the jury.
Yeah.
Because that's a form of communication with the jury. And we have very, very specific times when lawyers communicate with the jury directly. Now, every second I'm in the well, I'm communicating with the jury. Every single second. They're watching me, and I know they're watching, and they know that that. That's fine. But I can sit there and I can purse my lips. I can gently roll my eyes. I have been admonished for rolling my eyes.
I have too.
You know what? If you haven't, you really aren't doing your job, because you do have to test the limits to somebody, especially when someone's lying their ass off. Mm-hmm. How do you just sit there?
Well, and I know that Johnny Depp was making expressions that people were watching, and it just doesn't. I don't know.
Each court is very, very different, though, bro.
Yes.
Each court is very I remember there was one murder trial we were on, and when I was interning at Brooklyn, and in that murder trial, there was the defense attorney had struck all the white jurors. So there was one juror left. That juror happened to be a former district attorney, and so it was a former lawyer district attorney, and they had to keep him because they had struck all the white jurors. So the bats in the hearing. But then, like a couple of months later, the same thing happened again, and it happened to be another judge, and the judge was like, it's okay, whatever. So it really it depends on the judge.
Okay, well, I don't know, what the course is, etc. It just seems to me like a defendant is ultimately talking to the jury. I thought, every lawyer was representing, they're presenting the case to said jury, and you should be able to roll your eyes. What? Mm-hmm. Or react, especially if it's legitimate or unnatural. Now, on the alternate side, we had that guy who plowed into the crowd with the SUV. I forgot his name, but Daryl Brooks. Now, obviously, that's an example of, remove his ass because he was so disruptive in every way all the time that it was like, you couldn't move forward on the proceedings.
So, I just had a trial actually at the beginning of the month. Well, the beginning of the month, but the beginning of May, where my guy was he wasn't to the jury, but he was just kind of goofy and he was just kind of expressive. And the judge had to pull me up once or twice. He's like, gotta get your guy to calm down. I'm like, Your Honor, I will talk to him and do my best. But this guy is like all hyper and very gesticulative with his hands and everything. So I do understand at times it could be too much, but I do think that especially for someone like in Diddy's case, I think he does have a bit of I guess I always point out the idea of the fair trial, it's a one-way street. There's only one person listed in the Sixth Amendment that's entitled to that fair trial. So, I mean, if Diddy can, I guess I really want to know exactly what he was doing. If he's just nodding like, yeah, listen, guys, check this out. Not like, look, but if he's just like, that's right. That's right.
What they said he was doing was, there was a hot cross where the court, well, number one, the cross examination of the witness for Diddy, she got blown up horribly yesterday. For those of you who don't know, she got blown up like, oh my God, blown up. Where it was like, this happened all in Los Angeles. He's like, they said it happened in New York. It was like, he was actually in Los Angeles, in the Trump Hotel, no less. So she got blown up.
And Nate, this is the one where she said Diddy like picked her up and almost like hung her over the edge of the building.
But they come to find out he's all the way across the other side of the country on video and all. So that witness got blown up. But as the witness was being blown up, Diddy's looking at the jurors like, shaking his head, was like, yeah, you see, pointing at the witness. That's what
he was pointing to. Okay,
that's what the judge is like. It's a little much right now. That's what she said. I told you before. So it was like, you could do that. You can. It was going good for you, but you don't have to do that extra because obviously they see what's going on. So he's nodding at them, looking at them.
So if somebody used to make a point, like I had Ron representing me or whatever, and during a cross, and Ron made a good point, I looked at the jury and nodded like, yeah, that
may be okay, but if you're doing it all through the
exactly, if you did it once, the judge is gonna let you have it. But if it becomes a running commentary of mugging, it's problematic, and also it is a distraction. The jury's supposed to be listening to the evidence.
Yes.
Part of being a fact finder is evaluating the countenance and the personal experience of witnesses and people in court, but it's a distraction. You might as well just ask me, what would be wrong with coming in with a propeller beanie, all right, and wearing a barrel, all right?
Yes.
It doesn't say anywhere. Where does it say in the rules that you can't do that?
Well, and Ron, I guess more importantly to your point here, Eric may say like, hey guys, did you hear that part? And in reality, Ron, you might be like, no, I want him to hear this part. This is actually the critical thing. Yeah. As his lawyer, you're like, no, I want the jury to hear this next thing, not be distracted.
Yeah, they had a good joke. The Diddy defense had a really good day yesterday. They had a really good day.
All right, well, I've got a super chat here that's interesting, on point. Very random question. Have you seen 12 Angry Men where they write to acquit? I have a long time ago.
That's the glasses, right? Did you notice the guy, the key witness testified he wasn't wearing glasses, but he had indentations like this.
Yeah.
And someone noticed that.
It was the knife one too. Yeah. I mean,
yeah, they were right to acquit.
It was reasonable doubt. Yeah.
Yeah. Reasonable doubt.
But not only reasonable doubt, if in fact that guess about the glasses, if you believe that, then why is the prosecution playing games? Why are they not just presenting this guy as he is? What are they trying to hold up?
I don't know. It's been so long. I know that there were like,
it's been a long time. But that's
question too about the jury behavior.
I wish jurors were like that. But
that passionate.
Yeah.
So anyway, okay. Well, that was that random question, and that is interesting about what you're allowed to do. There are historical examples, though. I think it's a Chicago 7 trial or something where antics literally led to acquittals over time on appeal because they pissed off the judge to such a degree, from what I understand, that it went overboard on them, and they did that deliberately. You know, they were egging him on left and right. So could there be an argument in that sense that sometimes it's of value to be an ass?
I think you have to be careful if your strategy is trying to orchestrate a reversal or a mistrial that way, you're already toast. If you're hoping this is going to work or pay off for you, then I think that's clear. You know, the rest of your case is garbage. If that's your big strat. Because but I think there's cases before where I've watched them and people are like, well, do you think they should try to go for a mistrial? And I'm like, no, they got to go for the win. I mean, you can't try to set up and build in structural failure and structural error intentionally. Like, you should be trying to just win, and then saying, oh, well, if it all falls apart, we got this to fall back on.
Well, unless they've got you by the nuts.
Yeah. Well, no, like I said, if you've got nowhere to go and you've got no case, then yeah, you figure out whatever you can, you know, your pen quits working mistrial. I got a paper cut mistrial, you know.
I mean, what is it? If you have the law, pound the law. If you have the facts, pound the facts. If you have nothing, pound the table or something.
Yes. Yeah. I've had to pound the table a lot, but if you can avoid pound, if that's all you have, great. But if you have the law and the facts, just stick over there. Don't worry about smacking the table in the meantime.
Can I ask you, lawyers, about a very interesting legal thing that happened recently? So the Supreme Court, there's a case that went up to the Supreme Court where they couldn't hear it because they didn't have quorum because 5 of the justices had to recuse themselves. Did you guys hear about that?
Yes.
United States Supreme Court?
The United States
just
Supreme
happened
Court.
like last week, I think.
So, but fun fact, do you guys know there's only one other time it happened, there's another time it happened, but this is the only time where all 9 justices of the Supreme Court had to recuse themselves from a case.
No.
This is the current case.
Yeah, this is the current
we're talking about here.
There's a case. So the case which I'm talking about is U.S. versus Aluminum Company Co., where all
Alcoa.
Alcoa, where all 9 Supreme Court justices had to recuse themselves because they had essentially had some financial dealings with the company. And for the one and only time, the U.S. Congress passed a law to allow the Second Circuit to essentially become the Supreme Court for the one case to dispense the case. And Judge Learned Hand wrote the decision. For those in the law school kids, they should know Judge Learned Hand. He writes a whole bunch of cases, but he's the only justice to ever write a Supreme Court decision who is not a Supreme Court justice.
Wild.
So, it's a wild case.
Yeah.
So what happened in the case last week?
The case last week, so a publishing, it was a copyright claim where
it's a copyright against Ta-Nehisi Coates.
Yes. So there were 2 books that were written. One guy was saying that the second book that was written was infringing on their copyright. The lower court dismissed it and said no, even though they're talking about the same thing, that it's not an infringement. When it went up to the Second Circuit also denied it. Then it went up to the Supreme Court. 4 of the justices voted for certiorari, the 4 justices who were involved. It went up to the Supreme Court, but then they had to kick it back because 4 of the justices,
Alito, Sotomayor, Gorsuch, Amy Comey Barrett, and Kajani Brown Jackson all recused.
All had, but 4 of the justices, except for Alito, had book deals coming out. So they had, obviously the Supreme Court just got these $1 million book deals. So they could. So the publisher who was involved in the case was part of their. They had a financial interest in it. And then Alito, they believe he has a book deal coming up, so he had to recuse himself. Now, most people don't realize this, but for the Supreme Court to make a ruling on a case, you have to have 6 justices hear the case, and 5 justices have to affirm or deny it for it to be law. So since you had 5 justices recuse themselves, then you didn't have quorum, and they had to send the ruling back down. But Congress,
they said that they affirmed it because of this.
You could it's not really affirming it. They said essentially it goes ruling at the lower court
The
is
lower
now
court
the
ruling
rule.
stands. Yeah.
And the same thing happened with the Catholic thing, right? With Amy Coney Barrett when she recused herself from it. It was 4-4. Then the lower court.
Yes, when it's
Yeah, and the
4-4.
tie they go back to. Yeah.
But the difference between this case and the Alcoa case is that Congress stepped in and actually passed a law to make the Second Circuit for that one case the Supreme Court. And in this case, it just goes back down. So it's a little interesting U.S. history there, where you have the Second Circuit has been the only circuit to actually make a Supreme Court decision. That's not the Supreme Court.
That has to be a fascinating case. I definitely want to look into it more, because the fact that I'm sure the ties happen all the time, where it just gets affirmed because they can't agree or somebody recuses, whatever. But to actually pass a law, that means that they really wanted to get Alcoa, in my opinion. Why would you go and literally write a law just for the purpose of getting that case through? And by the way, who did it fine for? Alcoa?
Well, they dismissed it again. The low, because the lower court had dismissed it, so Alcoa won. The reason why they needed the case to be resolved is because this was in 1945 during the World War II, and this was an aluminum company making steel and everything, and they were being charged with being a monopoly. So they needed so they were like, we want the government was like, we want to break them up as a monopoly. And that's why, so they thought it was a national importance that they had this trial have a final determination. But essentially, the court sided with Alcoa anyway. So,
all right, Sean, you have a fan. I get super chats because you are here. I like that. So thank you, Obscure Destinations Outdoors.
Yes. Hi, Ron. I know the guy that runs it's named Ron, but also
I know.
Hi to the other Ron.
Joe, why don't you get up in here? Yeah. You talking about hey.
Speaking of Diddy,
yeah, Joe, you got to
give us our Diddy update, brother.
Yeah.
No
and
kidding.
I will say this for all the people watching: Joe's updates on the Diddy trial are amazing, especially not his 3-hour live stream. I don't watch that. I watch the one he does in the afternoon and the one he does after that. That is those are. I'm surprised they don't have millions of views now. I don't know if you saw. They were covered on, I think Temple covered one, and the Quartering covered Joe's thing too. So
I always try to share them when I see them come out on X. I always
they're the best. Period.
Yeah. So,
Joe's stuff, but those things that he does are really, really good. So,
all right. Well, if you can jump in, he might be on break from the trial and probably has to do his update for his adoring fans. By the way, how does that work for you, Ron? With Sabat or whatever, like in the winter?
This time of year, he probably should be able to stay the whole time, even though getting out of New York during rush hour can be a bear, as is well known. Sabbath doesn't start till well after 8 o'clock.
Right. So I was wondering though, just in terms of the law, like how do you guys deal with trials in December, January?
Never had a judge not accommodate me.
That's
universal.
Yeah,
counsel for plaintiff, it has to leave. I mean, the awkward part is, in fact, explaining. Yes, sunset is at 4:25, but I can't be here at 4:24. Okay, I got to get home and I got to, take a shower at the very least, and I got to leave time for the New Jersey Transit to do what it does or doesn't do, or whatever the case may be. But once you get past that hump, which is usually done, off the record, and the judges are super accommodating. They're great.
Oh, now is this because New York? What my show partner Mark said that an average Black person in New York is more Jewish than a Jewish person in the Midwest.
Well, that goes to Lenny Bruce. Lenny Bruce said, if you're from New York, you're Jewish, and if you're not from New York, you're a Gentile.
Mm-hmm. I remember there was a because I used to play chess down at the chess house with all the masters, and there were like a lot of the guys that happened to be Jewish. But one time we were like in this monster chess thing, and it got dark. It was on a Friday. And all the Jews, now I was a cop at the time, all the Jewish guys start giving me their wallets. Can you hold my wallet? You hold my wallet. I'm like, what am I holding your wallet for? What the hell are you talking about? We can't have any money after. So it goes down. So I'm like, why are you giving the black guy your money? They're like, we know that you're not. So they're giving me all their wallet. That's what you got to do, right, Ron? I'm like, why are you giving me all your wallets?
Well,
so I got to hold the wallets.
Look, all things being equal, if I stop on the street and give someone my money, chances are it's a black guy.
Oh,
That's true. That's true.
But we almost had Joe.
oh, he's
Joe,
I think he's having problems with the connection. As soon as
connection.
he, gets in, we'll definitely.
So Monday I had to go back and I got all these wallets I got to give out. Hey, here's yours. Here's yours.
The problem isn't the money. The problem is carrying in a public place.
Oh,
they probably also gave you not necessarily watches, but knowing my age, no one younger than me has handkerchiefs, but you got to empty out your pockets. That's why we have those Arabs in places, which you can't do in Manhattan. Some people say you can, but most of us say you can't. You can take a public area and make it a virtual private area. That's what an Arab does. So you can carry them.
See, all these things are, culturally speaking, I think.
Yes, in the rule. Yeah, those limitations no longer apply there.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's interesting. What do you guys think about the 9-0 Supreme Court case about? They call it now. Media's calling it reverse racism, but
no,
I think
racism.
That's the stupidest term.
Thank you. The state of Ohio. Yeah, it's just now discrimination. Which
thank you. Yes,
that's what it should be. Yeah, it's just discrimination, and it's like there's no more like.
Imagine a decision so bad on the politics there that Justice Jackson wrote the majority of it. That's how wrong the Sixth Circuit was.
Yes, yes, they all looked at her and said, "No, this is all yours." Well,
and the decision was snappy too. They were throwing some shade at the Sixth Circuit. So it's just.
They really just pulled that rule out of their asses. I mean,
no, that was the 81 decision. It was the decision in 81, and so 20 states were doing it. So that's what they were like. This is not 1881. This is like, come on, what the hell are you talking about? So.
Yeah, was it 44 years later? I mean, but no, I'm happy to see that. Coincidentally, I just released an interview I did with Brian Lunduke, and IBM, for example, they had policies. I think Barnes is going to be super happy about that because I think he's representing people who are going against Red Hat, who are literally not allowed to. I think it was not allowed to hire people unless they're black, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, this case is going to have, I think, some far-reaching effects. It kind of puts a dagger in DEI, doesn't it?
It does. It really hurts it. It's going to hurt, the entertainment industry. It's really going to hurt the entertainment industry going forward, I think.
I think it almost is like the death knell for DEI, because don't forget, DEI was, if everything equal, we can then use race to kind of, but now it's kind of like, well, that's actually racism. That's racism and discrimination too. So, let's just kind of because don't forget this case was, she's straight. And for those who don't know who knew what the law was essentially, if you're a black, I can go into, as long as I can show plausibility, I'm good. I can bring my claim. But if you're white, you have to show plausibility plus like some intent or something else. You had to show more if you were white. And so it kind of make you get this two standards, one for white people and then one for everybody else.
Like in the case of, like for somebody white, there's a comedian, and as I understand it, I don't want to misrepresent it. He was told by his agent and like the clubs or whatever, you cannot perform or we're dropping you because you are white. So if you have them actually saying because you were white or whatever, then you could bring it forward. Is that what you're describing?
Exactly. But the standard, just there were two standards. It's almost like they were second-class citizens. So there were these two standards that they were applying. And one, I don't know if going back to law school days, it's the Caroline products test, whether you were a discrete minority, blah blah blah, then you can apply this. But anyway, so the court just said discrimination to discrimination in every case. So no matter if you're white, black, or whatever, this is stupid to have these two standards.
Yeah,
well, this is great. And what is this going to mean for like it doesn't Harvard have like discrimination against Asians?
Well, this was the affirmative action. So this essentially confirms the affirmative action ruling, because the affirmative action ruling was, can you do this because we wanted to allow black race to be a factor within college admissions. But now race can't be a factor in college admissions at all. So then DEI was to say, okay, race isn't a factor, but what we'll do is if everything is equal, then we can use race. And now this is essentially saying that's also discrimination too.
Yeah.
So if that happens, then now that's why people are saying this essentially kills DEI, because you can't now, in other words, you can't use race at all. Even if everything is equal, it's still got to go to something else other than the color of the person's skin.
How charming. You know what? This decision affirms what Martin Luther King asked for, I believe.
It does.
Yeah, it does.
It's only taken, 60
years. They didn't require them to hire people based on the quality of their content of their character. you could still be the boss's son.
That's true. Yeah.
You could still be a great looking specimen. Again, they didn't want to hire the person who they just can't discriminate on the basis of color. So half of what Martin Luther King said. The rest is not going to happen in this world, because that's the way the ball bounces.
Well, I'd like to think that this is a major win for meritocracy. That merit base will maybe come back into play.
Does anyone understand how it is that, I mean, the backstory and how Jackson became, so affirmatively, you should pardon the expression,
became sane,
embraced this case? Maybe has anyone seen anyone comment on that?
A broken clock,
because she's so freaking strident on the Trump cases. Like it seems as if she cannot get outside of her ideological bubble to look at a case. And my wife pointed out in a post earlier, I guess it was yesterday, there were 3 9-0 decisions.
Yeah.
I mean, you would think the Supreme Court can't agree on what to order for lunch.
Yeah.
Speaking of handsome,
we got him.
Yeah,
what's up with
Joe?
The Diddy report.
I got a hookup over here. It got me Wi-Fi because I got no reception. So I got a hookup over here. I only got a few minutes. So first of all, appreciate the love that you guys have been expressing, and I very much appreciate it. I think it's very kind. So today, to just give you an update, if you're curious about what's happening now, we have the second of Diddy's girlfriends come out testifying about the sexual exploitation. She started testifying yesterday. And I'm in the middle of uploading my video. I'll give you a bit of a preview about what I basically was talking about. Her story sounds eerily similar to the story we heard from Cassie Ventura. The woman testifying now is acting under the pseudonym Jane for purposes of anonymity. She seems like a very private person. The same type of elegance and grace that we saw from Cassie. She carries herself in a way that seems like someone who is used to be treating like a princess, not with an air of rudeness, but just a certain grace and elegance that is well practiced and refined. And her story sounds horrible. It sounds terrible. I mean, Diddy is a monster. He's a terrible, terrible person. And her testimony basically spells out from the early days when they first meet on a yacht, and
don't tell me as a yacht girl.
Are you able to hear me? Are we good here?
No, go ahead. When you said met on a yacht, it just brought images of Meghan Markle to my mind, or accusations.
Well,
go on. Sorry.
And that's, they were flirting on the yacht. They exchanged numbers. At the time, he was dating a girlfriend of hers, but he says it wasn't that serious, and she ended up getting engaged to a different guy shortly thereafter, so she felt free to start pursuing the relationship. And she describes it as like the best romantic relationship any woman would dream of if they grew up watching Disney. So, she was, and how deeply head over heels in love she was with him for several months. And then one day he starts talking to her about the idea of maybe trying something new. Let's try something new. And we know how this goes. This goes that she ends up with some other guy, and he's watching and doing his thing. And that's basically the end of their romance. And the rest of her relationship is a routine of marathon engagements with strange men, many of whom she describes as being too nasty. Like, it's not even like... some of them were porn stars. Others were just seemingly practically randos. And when she's testifying, her testimony sounds, at least on direct, we haven't got it across yet, Her testimony sounds very heartfelt, very sincere, and really tragic. She starts crying during times that you would expect her to be crying, and she seems like she can't stop. Like she's like, when she talks about how she had to do these things for him. That's the good part if you're the state. The bad part, if you're the state, is that she's routinely explaining that her motivation was, this is what you do to please your partner. That's not what the state wants her to be saying. I mean, she seems like she's telling the truth, but she basically is describing that that's what you do, that she felt she had to do to please her partner. Now, is that coercive under 18 U.S.C. 1591? I think that raises a lot of questions. The state's going to try and say that he stripped her of opportunity to choose freely because he was loading her up with drugs and she had only taken X twice before in her life. And with Diddy, she's taking it 10 times over the course of a week, before making it part of her routine for her, what they call hotel nights, what Cassie calls freak-offs, those voyeuristic elements of the relationship. She refers to as hotel nights. And they were always on drugs, and she wanted drugs to dissociate from it. She said she tried doing once without drugs, and it was hell, because that's how bad it was. So that gives you an idea as to how much she really wants to do this. If you gotta plow through it by taking drugs, that's a pretty good sign here that you're really not happy here. But if she's true, you can say, if you're the defense, if she's choosing to do something that makes her unhappy because she's hoping it's earning her time with Diddy, you can make a claim that that's not coercive. That's a stupid choice that she's unfortunately making, and makes her story all the more tragic. Now, the other element I want to try and get us on is the idea that she was under his financial control. She had been living on the East Coast. He transferred her over to LA and got her an apartment or condo for someplace for $10,000 a month, and he was covering the rent. That was the extent of the money he was giving her. Maybe some allowance also in addition to that. Was she stopped from earning money? I guess she says that she thought about doing OnlyFans when she heard about a friend of hers who had made $4 million a year doing it, and thought she might be able to do as well. And she's objectively someone who looks like she probably would do well on OnlyFans. So, but he said no. And so, did you do it? No. Why not? Well, that's the sort of thing I thought I should get my boyfriend's approval on. Is that coercive? Is he coercing her? She's choosing to honor the wishes of her boyfriend. I think a lot of us would be very upset about the idea of a girlfriend going on OnlyFans. Even if she said she wasn't going to be engaging in sex, it would be lingerie or bikinis or what she calls it.
I want to get this straight. So he was very upset with the idea, or he's saying, "Oh hell no, you can't do OnlyFans. You're only allowed to have acts with people in front of me that I provide." It's sort of an odd
idea. I mean, look, if you want to try digging into his psyche, so first and foremost, make sure you bring a hazmat suit, and secondly, secondly,
was he nodding at you, Joe?
He's kind of, I think for him, if you ask me to try and figure out what his motivation is, I think it's psychological control. I think he gets off on the idea that he's controlling these women. Each of these women have had relationships with other big-name people who he's not particularly fond of. So that might be a motivating factor also. I don't know. And I think he likes the idea of destroying something that most of the world considers beautiful. I mean, that's my personal, I think he's a terrible monster. The question is, it seems like he wines and dines them to the point that they're willing to do whatever he wants them to do. I think they got better. Right now, I think they're doing better on RICO. On RICO, I think he's going to have a tough time getting out of the RICO charges. Look, and we haven't heard the conclusion of her direct testimony. If we start hearing testimony about her being physically assaulted, which we expect to hear, that definitely can change the complexion of how these trafficking charges play out. We did hear about that with Cassie, and when you hear a woman's getting beaten every time she does something wrong, you can understand them acting in fear, and that aside from their mind being addled by drugs and the potential financial factor, once physical violence comes into it, you can start understanding that they don't have a choice, even if they think they have a choice on some level, that they really don't have any choice. And certainly that he's forcing her to have unprotected sex with randos, and giving her some modicum level of control and choosing a partner here and there, sometimes a porn star, that seems as if, you can say that it's a jury question. Is that under his control or not? I can understand them coming either way. You need to get 12 people unanimously to say that she was being controlled. They might go for it because these victims seem so sincere and so completely, subjected to him, like they're treated like objects and crushed by him, and still coming back for more. So they might feel compassion and go along with it. I don't know where they're going to go. The RICO charges to me are something that seem to have much more legs, in the sense that he's got his people coming and helping him trafficking drugs, bribing people, potentially, I guess, the trafficking also, obstruction. There's just a lot of different predicate charges here that I think they're going to struggle to get away from if the jury looks at it from technical definition of RICO rather than the original implication of those statutes. Right now, the RICO charges are looking stronger. If they get convictions, we're probably going to have to hear about physical abuse, and we probably will hear about that physical abuse because the state said that he committed assault less than a year ago, and this woman was dating him between 2021 until he was arrested in 24. So with a little break in between. So the assault probably was against her, and we have not heard that testimony yet. I expect the direct testimony to go through the balance of today, and perhaps into Monday, and then we'll have the cross. Will be at least a day, probably. This witness can be on the stand through Tuesday. So that's a great stuff for you.
Question.
They gave Cassie 4 days. I wouldn't be surprised if they give her 4 days also, but three and a half. So she started testifying yesterday afternoon.
Joe, question. This may be completely off, but how is this case different than a casting couch type of situation? Like are these people who want to be artists or singers or whatever, and could this be related to a Weinstein type of case? I'm just curious.
Yeah. There's a bunch of people here, so it's hard for me to hear. But what I heard was, how is this different from a casting couch? The difference would be theoretically that there's more of a commercial element to it because he's paying these guys to come in and perform. So, and if it's not commercial sex, it's not 18 U.S.C. 1591. Now, I think it was on your show last week or some other time, I don't remember where I was, that I heard a notion that perhaps it can be considered commercial sex. Maybe it was when I was talking to Nate, that we consider commercial sex if, in fact, the woman performing thinks she's getting something out of it, and that could turn it into commercial sex, which in theory would be similar to a casting couch situation where they're performing for against their will for money. But then you're getting the person who's being compelled is also the one who's getting money. I hate these trafficking charges. I said it before. I'm going to say it a lot more times for the rest of the next month until this thing is over. Okay, these trafficking charges are insane. He's a monster, terrible human being. Maybe there should have been laws that were on the books to get him for what he's done to these women. Maybe not, because the line can get very easily blurred, and it's a little dangerous to have statutes like that floating around. But he's a terrible, terrible human being. No one should ever think anything other than that. Talented, hardworking, but awful to humanity and anyone who will to any girlfriend of his who finds himself in his custody for more than a week or two, because life is going to get very brutal for you very fast. At the same time, the idea of trafficking was basically a statute that was crafted in 2000 for the purposes of stopping people from kidnapping young girls and trafficking them out to make money. That's what it was about. So Congress said, how do we stop that? Well, we stop it if we pass 18 U.S.C. 1591, put in two elements. That's got to be the person's compelled and is commercial sex. But the idea there by the trafficker, the motivation is, I want to make money. I'm going to take this person, I'm going to force them to do what I want, and I'm going to milk the revenue I can get from doing that to them. That's what the whole point, that you're pimping them out against their will. Rather than a hooker who's choosing to do it, you're pimping them out against their will. That's what trafficking traditionally was. So what Maureen Comey has done here with this, because she doesn't want to bring any other charges, has been, okay, if I can take this element that's here as commercial sex, and I can find this element here of compulsion, even though it's got nothing to do with what the objective of the statute is, we all know that. But since I can meet these two elements, let's call it now a violation of this crime. To me, that gives way too much power to district attorneys to enable them to basically start searching out how to prosecute a person. I can see how they did this part of an element and that part of an element and craft a brand new way of interpreting a statute that never had this objective. It's the same thing we saw them do with the obstruction charges against the J6 people. It's the same thing they're doing here. I don't like when prosecutors had that level of power. That's supposed to be left to Congress. So I'm very bothered by those charges, and I hate the state for the way they brought this case. But I also hate Diddy because the guy's a freaking asshole. So I want them both to lose. I want them to be trying this case over and retrying it for the next century until he's dead. That would be perfect punishment for all these terrible people. If you ask me, that's speaking from the heart. Sorry, I usually don't use language like that. I apologize.
No, that's fine. I mean, it is a confusing situation. I mean, it's kind of like Bill Cosby. Most people will agree that he should have been released, even though I don't think anybody likes Bill Cosby.
Yeah. So. There's a lot there to what you said. Anyway, I would love to hang out with you guys and talk about the whole Trump versus Elon feud and all the other great stuff I'm sure we're talking about. But I got to get on back. I'm supposed to be in the war room at 5 o'clock Eastern, 4 o'clock Central. So I got to get
war room.
Was Steve Bannon?
What?
Was Steve Bannon that war room?
With Owen Schroyer.
Owen Schroyer? Oh, that'll be a good one too. Awesome, Joe.
All right. Well, congrats.
So I urge you guys to check that out. And if you can, if you like this type of content, I'm dropping it every day. So I'll see you, and I'll be dropping more reports on this. I'm probably going to have that Kid Cudi testimony, an AI playing his voice and reading off his testimony. I got to get my hands on the transcripts. I'm very excited to be dropping that hopefully over the weekend.
Sounds good. Right. Thanks for checking in.
Great seeing you guys.
Good seeing you, man.
Godspeed.
Godspeed to you.
Joe Nerman helping us take it to fight to the globalists here on InfoWars.
Hey, that's a huge audience.
Yes,
It'll help him out.
Awesome.
It'll help him a lot.
Yeah. Oh no, I'm sure it'll be a fun time.
So definitely. Nick, you haven't said anything for a while. Your thoughts on all these cases.
These are cases I have limited to none information about. So I'm just listening in and learning.
Okay, so I think the last case, we didn't really talk about YSL.
Oh, YSL. No. Well, YSL is about the YSL 2.0 has only one defendant left after it's Christian Eppinger, who is the last one on the YSL trial 2.0. And he is not charged with any of the alleged unalivings in the trial.
How many people died with this case?
Well, there were two charges against a number of people regarding it was Mr. Drinks and Mr. Two unalivings, and all of the plea deals have removed the charge of unaliving, and the one that was left was acquitted. So the entire RICO trial that was about these two, gang affiliation, and especially these two unalivings, nobody out of the 28 original that was charged with RICO and everything, none were convicted of unaliving either of the two.
Yes.
None of them.
Yeah.
And I understand why, because once we saw the actual evidence for it, it was BS, complete BS. It was so bad.
And it's interesting because the beginning of the case, the DA's office said that they were responsible for triggering or being involved in some way or another nearly 50 homicides. And then we have this big RICO trial, and that clip that I think Nick sent you in the chat, Eric, of Fanny Willis being interviewed.
Yes.
It just, the attitude she has after she said the head of the gang didn't have to plea out to the murder. That's the impressive part.
Yeah.
Like none of the big timers. Nobody went down for it.
I wish Nate was still here, but he talked to me about it on the phone. He said that she actually does have a point in the sense that she got a whole ton of convictions. And that's all she cares about.
The only people actually doing time were people who already were doing time.
Yeah.
The rest of them are on probation. with time served. So I don't see that if you spend somewhere in the Mr. Fleischman said one number, I have another one, but she spent between 15 and 30 million dollars on this case, and all she got out of it was probation so far.
I'm curious though, and you guys can confirm this or not, because maybe Nate was speaking to me as a former DA. Who gives a damn, in terms of her, like if in the end it's just a win-loss on the scoreboard, does the money or anything else really come into effect? And does she have that point of saying, hey, I got 19 out of 21 and probation. Hey, I don't do the sentencing. That's on them. The YSL, whatever, the main dude got off. She got her conviction, so she's got her points on the board. Is that a fair statement?
Well, if you only go by points, yeah, sure, then this was an absolute success. But that was out 28 people, one is still left, so 27. A bunch pled out. 2 or 3, the charges was dropped. So we all of a sudden we are down to more or less $1 million per individual and probation.
He said, well, I find it personally.
If you only go by the points, yeah, sure. Yeah,
but that's her. That is, I feel like, who she is and what she represents. But anyway, here's what we're talking
That's not, well, Eric, I was going to say, Nate is right. Because as a prosecutor, Doug could say, oh, the case is garbage. And Fanny's are going to go, you pled out to it. You pled out. You admitted guilt to committing a crime. So yes, in a way, prosecutors will accept that. But in Fanny's case, this is kind of cope, because the way she talks about this.
Let's see.
Because victims of all races, of all socioeconomic status matter. So stop talking to attorneys that don't live in Fulton at all. They live in safe neighborhoods. Their children go to safe schools. My children in these communities, they matter too.
Respectfully, Ms. Willis, I asked you about the two
murder
convictions that never came through.
Ms. Willis have never lived in a dangerous neighborhood. I've checked her history, so neither she or her children.
And her kids are full grown.
Her full-grown kids, none of them have ever lived in a so-called dangerous neighborhood.
All right.
Payers and to the taxpayers that may have.
My message to taxpayers is it was an amazing time. We had 19 convictions. The community is safer. We made sure that we got the resolutions we want. If they're unhappy with sentencing, they should elect other judges.
And you also relied heavily on the RICO law that you had
and I'm going to continue to rely on it because it works, it's effective, and it tells jurors the full message.
But other people may say with the other people that it wasn't effective.
Other people weren't elective as a DA.
I got to say, other people may say is the sleaziest thing in the world for when reporters want to argue with the person they're interviewing. But people are saying, some critics say,
yes.
And the critic is, of course, the reporter themselves.
But in the context of this, Fanny Willis only does interviews with one reporter. Everybody else has to chase her down. And she has a 2 SUV security detail with her at all times.
I'm surprised Nathan Wade was
Nobody gets near her. So this, I'm
giving him credit I'm giving him credit. I'm just saying,
yes.
Asterisk though.
Yeah.
Critics are saying means that this is what I'm saying. But all right, not the biggest crime. I give him. He is doing the job that mainstream media should be doing and isn't. I don't know how unmainstream he is, but.
Well, and by the way, I'm not a fan of Fanny Willis. I'm just saying in terms of terms of strategy and wanting to beat her or have her out of office. Unfortunately, this isn't going to help. She just won by a landslide, if I recall, again. With everything else going on here, so I'm kind of going. Okay, we can go. Oh, it's horrible. It's this. It's that. It's like, you know what? She doesn't care. Because again, she gets the points on the board, and
she gets the points on the board. She can do her fundraisers for herself. She can celebrate hers. I mean, all of that she can do. Because mainstream people on the street, this is all they hear. We who have some background information around everything else she has done, like not building the youth center she got $4 million for, not testing 2,500 SA kits because they run out of money because she had to do this RICO trial. All of that we know, but not the general population.
And she is right, though. We learned it was an amazing time. We got to learn so many. We learned about so many new and interesting people in the Atlanta area, like Brian Steele, Doug Weinstein, Max Shart. We learned about Young Thug, Yak Gotti. Well, yeah, we learned about Woody. We learned about Judge Glanville.
Phil Holloway. Well,
Phil Holloway.
Brought us to the community.
We also learned about how the Fulton County Jail is basically like a gladiator academy, and that guys will tunnel through the walls in the pods to attack each other, and the jail is completely a disaster zone. Like, well,
that's not that right. They need to be like New Orleans and tunnel through the wall and get out.
Yeah, well, yes, I agree. So instead of trying to kill your opponent, just leave. But yes, we learned so much about Atlanta. It's like, wow, she is right. It was an amazing time.
Yeah,
and it's about the friends
we learned that Rice Street has right around 30 times the amount of death per inmates than the average jail.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Well, I've learned a lot today, and I think I'm going to wrap it up and find out what everybody has coming up. Sean.
Yes.
You're not on with InfoWars, but you're doing something today, right?
Yes. No. We're doing Karen Reed. I've been doing it in the evenings to let people catch up because I don't normally get to watch it during the day. So we're starting that at 6 p.m. Tomorrow night. We are going over a very interesting, some filings done by a guy named I don't want to say his name too much. I'll just do R. Coleman. And the Smash JT lawsuit against Alyssa Mercanti. That'll be tomorrow night. And then actually, I'm not sure what we're going to do Sunday, but those are kind of like the next two things. So,
all right, Ron, what do you have coming up?
Nothing.
All right. He's got Sabat. Sabat's coming up then today. Nick, what do you have coming up?
I'm having my slightly bust Friday law show. Starts at 5 p.m. and then I will redirect to Sean, and then I will join him, and we will dual stream for a bit until the Wheel of Regrets says, "No, Nick, you're done." And we will check out today's Karen Reed trial. Other than that, tomorrow, Saturday and Sunday, I'm doing, I'm streaming the Judge Simpson. Judge Simpson, you might know, in the YouTube world, he is a very, very clippable judge because he is funny, he's fair, and he's doing a lot of fun stuff. So I will be streaming that. His criminal docket on Saturday and his civil docket on Sunday.
Okay. All right. That sounds good. Those who are interested, America's Untold Stories today, I'll be doing it at 5:30 as usual every Friday. Headline story, obviously, we've got this Elon Musk, Donald Trump issue going on. We are going to be leading with the Bill Maher, David Mamet discussion about the JFK assassination and some of their crazy theories, and that will be discussed as well. But it's kind of hard to ignore, the clash of titans that is happening right now. That would be completely burying the lead, if you will. So that'll probably be the main story, and of course everything else in the news. I hope to see some of you there.